At dawn on a cold January morning in 1945, somewhere west of the Vistula River, Soviet tank crews believed the balance of armoured power had finally tipped in their favour. They sat inside massive steel beasts that weighed nearly 50 tons, armed with guns so large they had shaken entire proving grounds during tests. These men had been told again and again that the enemy's most feared tank could now be destroyed with a single, well-placed shot. They believed it. But within hours, burning wrecks on a snow-covered battlefield would teach them a harsh lesson. The German Tiger was still extremely dangerous, and underestimating it could be fatal. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. The tank they trusted was the IS-2, officially the Joseph Stalin model 1944. It was the pride of Soviet heavy armour, designed after bitter lessons learned against German Panthers and Tigers in 1943. With its thick sloped armour and a massive 120mm D-25T gun, the IS-2 was meant to smash through German defences and dominate any tank it met. On paper, it looked unstoppable. Soviet reports claimed it could knock out a Tiger at over 1,500 metres. Training films showed Tigers exploding under the force of a single shell. Political officers reinforced the message. The Red Army finally had a tank that could crush the enemy's best. But war has a way of ignoring paper plans and training films. The IS-2 itself was born from urgency. After the battles of Kursk in July 1943, Soviet designers understood that earlier heavy tanks like the KV-1 were no longer enough. German guns had grown stronger, armour thicker, tactics sharper. Engineers at the Chelyabinsk-Kirov plant, known as Tankograd, worked under intense pressure. By late 1943, prototypes were already firing the massive 122mm gun. The recoil was violent, the blast overwhelming, but the result was undeniable. When the shell hit, something usually died. By January 1945, the Red Army was preparing for the Vistula Oder Offensive, a massive push that would carry Soviet forces from central Poland to the gates of Berlin in just weeks. One of the key formations involved was the 1st Guards Tank Army under Colonel General Mikhail Katukov, a veteran commander who knew German armour better than most. He had fought Tigers before, survived them, and respected them. His army included several Guards heavy tank regiments equipped with the IS-2, including the 71st Guards Heavy Tank Regiment and the 7th Guards Heavy Tank Brigade. These units were assigned to break through fortified German lines and destroy any armoured counterattacks. The men inside the IS-2s came from all over the Soviet Union. Some were barely 20 years old. Others were veterans who had burned inside earlier tanks and somehow survived. They trusted the armour around them. But more than that, they trusted the idea behind the tank. This was not just a machine. It was a symbol that the Red Army had learned, adapted, and was now stronger than ever. Opposing them were remnants of some of Germany's most experienced armoured units. Among them were Tiger-Wammy tanks from Schwerpanzerabteilung 501 and later Schwerpanzerabteilung 424. These units had once been elite, operating with full strength and support. By 1945, they were shadows of their former selves. Fuel was scarce. Spare parts were almost impossible to find. Replacement crews were rushed and often poorly trained, but the core of these units still consisted of hardened veterans who had fought at Leningrad, Kursk, and Kharkov. The Tiger Y itself was already outdated by German standards. It was heavy, slow, and mechanically demanding, but it still carried the feared 80 Murat KWK-36 gun, one of the most accurate tank guns of the war. Its optics were excellent. Its crew layout was efficient. And most importantly, the men inside it often knew exactly how to use it. On January 14, 1945, the Soviet offensive began with a massive artillery barrage near the town of Sandomierz. Thousands of guns opened fire before dawn, turning German positions into fields of smoke and fire. The ground shook for hours. Villages disappeared behind walls of flame and dust. German soldiers huddled in bunkers, waiting for the inevitable. When the barrage lifted, Soviet infantry surged forward, followed closely by tanks. IS-2s moved slowly but confidently, crushing obstacles and firing high-explosive shells into bunkers and villages. The blast from their guns could collapse buildings and silence machine gun nests in a single shot. For infantry advancing behind them, the IS-2 felt like a moving fortress. For many crews, this was their first combat experience in the new heavy tank. Morale was high. Losses in the opening days were lighter than expected. 2 days later, on January 16th, near the village of Lisów in southern Poland, confidence met reality. The terrain around Lisów was a mix of rolling fields, tree lines and small villages connected by narrow roads. Snow covered the ground, but visibility was good. The Soviet 71st Guards Heavy Tank Regiment was advancing alongside infantry units of the 53rd Guards Rifle Division. Their mission was to push west and clear German resistance along the road network leading toward Kielce. According to intelligence reports, German armour in the area was weak or non-existent. Those reports were wrong. Unbeknownst to the Soviets, German Tiger tanks had taken up concealed positions near the edge of a forest overlooking open ground. These Tigers belonged to a Kampfgruppe, formed from Schwer Panzerabteilung 424. Their commanders understood that a direct confrontation with superior numbers would mean destruction. Instead, they chose ambush. The Tigers were dug in, hull down, with only their turrets exposed. Range markers were already set. Fire lanes were carefully chosen. At around mid-morning, the lead IS-2s moved into an open field, advancing in line abreast. Their commanders scanned the horizon through periscopes, expecting little resistance. German armour, they believed, had been shattered by the artillery barrage. The snow reflected the pale winter sun. Engines rumbled steadily. Then the first shot rang out. A Tiger's 80 8mm gun fired from over 1,200 metres away. The shell struck the front of an IS-2 just below the turret ring. The armour cracked, spalled, and fragments ripped through the fighting compartment. The tank stopped instantly. Smoke poured from its hatches. Seconds later, a second shot hit another IS-2, this time piercing the lower glasses. That tank burned fiercely, its ammunition detonating in a violent explosion. Soviet crews were stunned. They had been told their frontal armour was nearly immune at long range. But the Tiger's gun, firing armour-piercing capped shells, was still deadly accurate. German gunners had the advantage of prepared positions and calm nerves. They did not rush their shots. Each round was aimed, fired and corrected. The IS-2s returned fire. The 122mm gun roared, sending massive shells toward the Tiger positions. The sound was thunderous, echoing across the frozen fields. But here another harsh lesson emerged. The IS-2's gun was powerful, but its rate of fire was slow. The two-piece ammunition with separate projectile and propellant meant even a well-trained crew could manage only 2 or 3 rounds per minute. Tigers, by contrast, could fire twice as fast. Several Soviet shells overshot or struck the ground short of the German tanks. Others hit trees or earthworks. One Tiger was hit squarely on the turret, the shell exploding on impact. The blast rocked the tank, damaged external equipment and stunned the crew, but failed to penetrate. The Tiger reversed slowly into cover, still operational. Within minutes, the field was chaos. Burning Soviet tanks dotted the snow. Infantry hugged the ground, unsure where the fire was coming from. Radio traffic became frantic as commanders tried to identify enemy positions. Some IS-2 commanders attempted to advance, hoping to close the distance. Others hesitated, unsure whether their armour could withstand another hit. The Tigers continued to fire, shifting targets carefully, exploiting the IS-2's slow reload times. They aimed for weak spots they knew well. Lower hull plates, turret rings, side armour when a Soviet tank turned even slightly. By early afternoon, the Soviet advance had stalled. Out of the regiment's leading tanks, several had been knocked out or damaged. Recovery vehicles could not reach them under fire. German infantry began withdrawing under the cover of the Tiger guns. Though few in number, the Tigers had achieved a local tactical success. For the first time, many IS-2 crews realised that their tank was not invincible. Reports from that day were blunt. One after-action summary noted that enemy heavy tanks, presumed Tiger, demonstrated effective fire against IS-2 at ranges exceeding expectations. Another report criticised Soviet tank commanders for advancing without proper reconnaissance and infantry screening. The lesson was clear. Firepower alone did not guarantee victory. This was not an isolated incident. Earlier, in August 1944, during fighting near the Sandomierz bridgehead, Soviet IS-2s had already clashed with Tigers from Schwer Panzerabteilung 501. In those battles, the IS-2 had proven it could destroy Tigers, but only when used correctly. At long range, the IS-2's armour-piercing BR-471 shell struggled against the Tiger's frontal armour unless it struck at favourable angles. Meanwhile, the Tiger's 88mm gun could still penetrate parts of the IS-2, especially the lower front plate and turret ring. Soviet engineers were aware of these weaknesses. Testing conducted at the Kubinka Proving Ground in late 1944 revealed uncomfortable truths. The IS-2's upper glacis was highly resistant, but the lower glacis and turret front were vulnerable at combat ranges. Weld seams and casting imperfections sometimes made matters worse. Meanwhile, the Tiger's armour, though flat, was thick and reliable. What made the Tiger especially dangerous was not just the tank itself, but how it was used. German commanders rarely charged forward with Tigers. Instead, they used them defensively, from prepared positions, covering open ground. They coordinated with infantry, anti-tank guns, and terrain. A single Tiger, well positioned, could dominate a sector for hours. Soviet doctrine emphasized breakthrough and momentum. Heavy tanks like the IS-2 were supposed to smash through defences and keep moving, even under fire. But against Tigers, reckless advances could be costly. After January 1945, instructions were revised. IS-2 units were told to engage German heavy tanks from ambush, when possible, to manoeuvre aggressively for side shots, and to coordinate closely with self-propelled guns like the Su-100 and ISU-122. Crew training also changed. Greater emphasis was placed on target identification, range estimation, and cooperation with infantry. Tank commanders were reminded that the Tiger was not a myth, but a real machine operated by real men who could still fight effectively. The psychological impact on crews was significant. Memoirs from IS-2 commanders often mention the shock of seeing their shells fail to knock out Tigers immediately. Senior Lieutenant Ivan Kuznetsov of the 7th Guards Heavy Tank Brigade later wrote that, "We respected the Tiger again after that day. Not feared, but respected. It could kill you if you made a mistake." Despite these setbacks, the Red Army adapted quickly. By late January, combined arms tactics improved noticeably. Infantry cleared woods and villages ahead of tank advances. Artillery was used to suppress suspected Tiger positions before tanks moved forward. When IS-2s encountered Tigers, they attempted to close the distance rapidly or manoeuvre to force the enemy to expose side armour. There were moments of redemption. On January 18, 1945, near the town of Chmilnik, an IS-2 commanded by Guards Captain Nikolai Shishkin engaged a Tiger at under 800 metres. The first shot struck the Tiger's front, cracking armour but not penetrating. The second shot, fired moments later, hit the turret cheek and punched through, killing the German crew instantly. The Tiger burned quietly in the snow. It was a reminder that the IS-2 could win, but not effortlessly. German losses mounted rapidly as the offensive continued. Fuel shortages worsened. Tigers were often abandoned after mechanical failures or destroyed by their own crews to avoid capture. By the end of January, most Tiger units in Poland were destroyed or scattered. Yet even in retreat, they demanded caution. In February and March 1945, similar encounters occurred in East Prussia and Pomerania. Each time, Soviet reports repeated the same warnings. Do not underestimate enemy heavy tanks. Do not assume immunity. Use terrain. Use infantry. Use artillery. Even in the final battles of the war, such as at the Silo Heights in April 1945, Soviet commanders continued to warn about Tigers and Tiger IIs. Though few in number, they were always treated as serious threats. IS-2 crews learned to listen for the sharp crack of the 88mm gun, to watch for muzzle flashes, and to never expose their hull unnecessarily. The moment Soviet IS-2s learned that Tigers were still extremely dangerous was not a single instant, but a series of brutal encounters where theory met steel and fire. It was learned in burning fields near Lisov, in the forests of Sandomierz, and on frozen roads leading west. It was learned through loss, adaptation, and hard-earned experience. In the end, the IS-2 fulfilled its role. It smashed bunkers, destroyed Panthers, and helped carry the Red Army to Berlin. But it did so with humility imposed by an enemy that refused to fade quietly. The Tiger, even outnumbered and nearing the end of its war, proved that a well-handled weapon could still change the course of a battle. That lesson stayed with Soviet armoured doctrine long after the war ended. Power mattered, but so did training, coordination, and respect for the enemy. On those cold days in early 1945, inside thick steel hulls scarred by combat, Soviet tankers learned that victory was never guaranteed by design alone. And the Tiger, one last time, made sure they understood it. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.